The kettle hissed over a marble counter that wasn't hers, in a house that had never welcomed her. Elena wiped her hands on her apron, pretending not to hear her mother-in-law's laughter slicing through the kitchen door. "Some people," Miriam said, the syllables soaked in wine and superiority, "will always belong downstairs." The words clung like smoke. Elena smiled, small and silent, the kind of smile that means survival, not consent. Upstairs, Crystal chimed. Downstairs, she folded napkins into perfect quarters. Years later, that same smile would return behind the glass walls of a boardroom, harder, colder. But tonight, she was the maid who listened. And in that stillness, ambition took root like a quiet storm beneath the tile. Morning light spills through blinds, cutting her world into bars. Elena stands before a mirror, hair undone, apron gone. But the bruises left by words remain. Her husband, Daniel, murmurs from the bed. She doesn't mean it like that. The apology is cowardice dressed as comfort. Elena exhales, straightens her shoulders, and packs his briefcase. A habit learned from silence. "You always defend her," she says, voice level, eyes steady. "One day you'll wish you hadn't." The air between them stills, heavy with prophecies that sound like domestic peace. The company lobby gleams. Marble, glass, ambition. Elena enters with a tray of coffee cups, invisible in plain sight. The elevator doors close behind the board members, laughter echoing up the shaft. She stares at the brass panel's reflection, her eyes tracing her own outline. "Someday," she whispers, as if rehearsing belief. Behind her, a janitor nods, understanding without words. The solidarity of those who clean up other people's triumphs. Rain taps against the bus window. Elena's eyes follow droplets racing down glass. Every streak a memory. She watches the city's towers shimmer. Unreachable, for now. A crumpled flyer sits in her lap. Business management evening courses. The ink smudged, but legible enough to change a life. She presses it between her palms as if sealing a prayer. Back home, the house sleeps. Elena studies under the dim hum of a kitchen lamp, surrounded by open textbooks and unpaid bills. Her apron hangs on a chair, retired for the night, but not forgotten. The clock ticks past midnight. She writes her name at the top of a practice form. Elena Navarro. Below it, in smaller letters, she adds, "Future CEO." The ink trembles, but the hand that writes it does not. 3 years pass like a slow metamorphosis. Elena, now 30, moves through the corridors of a mid-level firm. Her own office, her own name on the door. The silence she once served in now bends toward her. Yet, in every success, she hears echoes of laughter behind a kitchen door. Miriam still calls occasionally, her voice smooth as varnish. Daniel's struggling. "You should come for dinner." Elena smiles into the receiver, her tone polite, professional. "Of course, mother." Revenge never announces itself. It learns to speak softly first. Dinner at Miriam's is theater, the same chandelier, the same wine. But this time, Elena's silence is armor. Miriam leans in, voice honeyed with false warmth. "You've done well for yourself, dear. Still working those assistant roles?" Daniel shifts uncomfortably, sensing the spark beneath the tablecloth. Elena's smile is surgical. "Actually, I was just promoted. Operations lead." The word lands heavy, a quiet grenade wrapped in charm. Late at night, Elena reviews financial reports, numbers that could alter entire empires. Her mentor, Robert Lee, pauses at the door. "You're not sleeping again." She doesn't look up. Sleep is a luxury for those already safe. He studies her, the precision, the quiet vengeance hidden under diligence. "Safety," he says, "isn't the same as power." She finally looks up. I'm not aiming for safety. Board meeting morning. Men in suits, air thick with cologne and calculation. Elena enters with calm precision, not as staff, but as equal. The CEO introduces her. Our new director of strategic development. Applause. She nods, scanning the room like a quiet storm surveying open sea. Miriam's name appears on a partnership file across the table. Her family company is merging. Elena's gaze lingers, unreadable. Evening rain returns. Elena sits in her car outside Miriam's gated estate, windshield blurred with drops. The house lights glow warm, unchanged. She whispers, "Soon." The rain masks her voice, but not her certainty. In her rearview mirror, she catches her own reflection, composed, older, unrecognizable to the girl who once folded napkins in silence. The engine hums softly as she drives away, headlights slicing through the wet dark. The morning of the merger gleams with cold light, the kind that exposes everything. Elena, now 32, stands before the mirror of her penthouse, fastening diamond studs that once belonged to Miriam. A wedding gift reclaimed through quiet endurance. The city hums beneath her, a pulse she has learned to control. On the news, the merger dominates headlines. Navarro Group and Whitmore Holdings finalize acquisition. Miriam's empire, tethered to Elena's signature. Daniel calls, voice brittle with disbelief. You're the one behind Navarro. Elena's pause is deliberate. I told you I was studying. Silence stretches between them, thick as memory. For the first time, she feels no need to explain. The boardroom is colder today, not in temperature but in tone. Miriam enters flanked by her advisors, a queen without a throne. Elena sits at the head of the table, posture serene, every motion deliberate. Mrs. Whitmore, she greets, the title formal, distant. Miriam hesitates, her smile rigid. Elena, she replies, voice brittle porcelain. The meeting begins. Quarterly results, profit projections, restructuring. Each line of the presentation erases a fragment of Miriam's control. By the final slide, Elena's voice is the only one that matters. Miriam's hand trembles as she reaches for her pen. For the first time, she understands that the maid didn't just rise. She rewrote the house rules. In the washroom after the meeting, Miriam stares into the mirror, her reflection older, lines deeper. Elena's reflection appears behind her, soft but unyielding. You've done well, Miriam says, tone half respect, half wound. You always did underestimate me, Elena replies. The silence between them hums, electric, layered with years of class tension and unspoken judgment. Miriam finally turns, eyes glassy. You think this makes you better than us? Elena's voice, calm as glass. No, it makes me free. They stand there, two women bound by pride and history, divided by who they chose to become. The air feels thick enough to shatter. That night, Elena visits the old house, the one where she once stood by the sink, folding napkins. The kitchen smells the same, faint lemon and wine. She moves through it quietly, touching the counter where humiliation once lived. Daniel finds her there, uncertain whether to speak. You came back, he says. She turns, eyes soft. Just to see what I left behind. They stand inches apart, a marriage in ruins but not bitterness. I never wanted to hurt her, Daniel whispers. You didn't, she replies. She did that herself. Outside, the rain starts again, not as omen, but as cleansing. Morning finds Elena at the new headquarters. Sunlight spilling across glass floors, employees greeting her with cautious reverence. She pauses before the large company logo, Navarro Holdings. Beneath it, her reflection stands tall, calm, inevitable. In her office, she opens a file labeled Future Projects. Education Foundation. Her eyes linger on a photograph, her younger self in that beige uniform. A quiet smile forms, not of pride, but of peace, when her assistant asks, "Where should I send the first scholarship check?" She answers without hesitation, "To the neighborhood I used to clean." The story had always been about more than revenge. It was about rewriting inheritance. The boardroom is changed, but silence sounds the same. Elena, 34 now, listens as younger executives debate growth strategies, their voices full of theory, but light on weight. She no longer needs to prove herself. Yet the ache of something missing lingers. Her assistant, Amira, slides a document across the table. "Your mother-in-law's foundation wants to collaborate," she says. Elena freezes for a moment. The irony feels scripted by fate. "Schedule a meeting," she replies quietly. Power, she's learned, doesn't erase history. It just rearranges it. As the room empties, Elena looks out at the skyline, wondering when success had begun to sound like solitude. Miriam's health has faltered. The woman once framed in superiority now moves slower, her voice softened by years. When Elena visits the hospital, she hesitates by the doorway, unsure if she's entering as adversary, daughter, or witness. Miriam's eyes open, surprise flickering into weary recognition. "You came," she whispers. "You called," Elena answers. A fragile truce forms in the air between them. They talk about Daniel, about how distance grows even in marriage. Miriam's laugh is faint but real. "He never understood either of us." Elena sits, folding her hands. Maybe we expected him to translate what couldn't be said. The beeping of machines keeps time. Fragile, rhythmic, forgiving. The foundation gala glitters with curated generosity. Elena delivers a speech under amber spotlights, her words steady, eyes reflecting years of discipline turned into purpose. "Empowerment," she says, "begins where humiliation once lived." Applause swells, but her gaze drifts to a table near the back. A young cleaning woman, standing just outside the crowd, watching with quiet reverence. Elena sees herself in that look, a memory-turned mirror. When the speech ends, she steps off stage, finds the young woman, and hands her an envelope. "For your education," she says simply. The girl's hands tremble. "Why me?" Elena smiles. "Because I remember." Daniel arrives late that night, eyes clouded by regret. "You've changed," he says, not as accusation, but awe. Elena pours tea, her gestures calm. "So have you," he laughs softly. "I miss when we were simple." She meets his eyes. "We were never simple, Daniel. We were just smaller." The conversation drifts, half memory, half apology. He tells her he's proud, that Miriam speaks of her with reluctant admiration. The words land gently, but their marriage remains a bridge that leads nowhere. When he leaves, she doesn't cry. Growth, she realizes, often means learning to love without needing to stay. Dawn spills across Elena's balcony, soft, muted gold. She stands barefoot, a silk robe flowing lightly in the breeze. Below, the city hums, indifferent and eternal. She sips her coffee, reading the morning paper. Navarro Foundation expands global education program. Miriam's photo accompanies the article. Smiling beside her, not rivals, not enemies, co-founders. Elena exhales, letting go of the weight she carried for so long. Inside, her phone rings. Amira again. Another meeting, another milestone. She answers calmly, eyes still on the horizon. "Let's begin," she says. And in that quiet command lies everything. Revenge transformed into legacy, silence reborn as strength. It's been 5 years since the merger. Elena, now 39, has become a myth in her own company. Efficient, elegant, untouchable. But myths are lonely creatures. At home, Her walls are lined with awards, certificates, and framed magazine covers, each whispering that she's made it. Yet, in the silence between phone calls, she feels time catching up, the soft ache in her hands, the pauses before speaking. Her foundation thrives, her empire stable, but something inside her stirs, a hunger not for more power, but for meaning. When Amira enters with updates, Elena smiles faintly. "Let's cut travel next month," she says. "I think it's time I go home." So, Elena drives through her old neighborhood. The streets narrower than she remembers, the walls chipped but familiar. Children play soccer near the same bakery she once passed with lowered eyes. The shopkeeper, older now, recognizes her instantly. "You used to work for the Whitmores," he says, half wondering. "Not anymore," she replies softly. "Now I work for everyone." He laughs, not understanding, but she doesn't need him to. For a moment, she's simply Elena again, not the CEO, not the myth, but the girl who once dreamed through bus windows. The scent of bread, the sound of laughter, reminders that success means little if you forget the soil that grew you. At the Foundation's Youth Center, Elena watches children draw future cities with colored pencils, bold, impossible skylines. A girl with braids approaches her. "Miss Navarro, is it true you used to clean houses?" The question lands without judgment, only curiosity. Elena nods, smiling. "Yes, that's where I learned to see details everyone else ignored." The girl nods seriously, as though that truth fits neatly into her growing understanding of the world. Later, as Elena leaves, she glances back at the room, walls filled with dreams made tangible. It feels less like charity, more like repayment. A dialogue across time between who she was and who she dared to become. Miriam passes quietly one winter morning. The funeral is small, tasteful. A handful of friends, a few board members, Daniel at the podium. Elena stands near the back, her face unreadable, yet gentle. When Daniel approaches afterward, he hesitates before speaking. "She wanted you to have this," he says, handing over an envelope. Inside, a letter, handwritten in looping ink. "You were never beneath me, Elena. I was just afraid you'd surpass me." The words blur slightly as Elena reads. Outside, snow begins to fall. Silent, steady, dissolving as it touches the ground. She folds the letter carefully, as if handling forgiveness itself. That night, Elena sits at her desk once more, the city glowing beneath her windows. On the screen, plans for a new initiative, scholarships for domestic workers' children. She reads the proposal twice, then signs her name with slow intention. Elena Navarro, founder. Her pen lingers over the paper, tracing the name as though engraving it into the future. She glances toward a framed photograph. Miriam at last year's gala, smiling beside her. In that image, she sees the evolution of both women, pride melted into humanity. She whispers, almost to herself, "We built something that outlived our wounds." Outside, dawn begins to bloom. Quiet, certain, and merciful. 10 years have passed. The city outside Elena's window hums differently now. Faster, younger. She's 50, and the rhythm of her empire no longer depends on her heartbeat. A new CEO, chosen and mentored by her, now runs Navarro Holdings. Elena spends her mornings in a sunlit study, consulting quietly, her days filled with mentorship rather than meetings. When Amira, now head of operations, visits, she brings laughter and energy that reminds Elena of the woman she once was. Relentless, idealistic, unbroken. As Amira leaves, she pauses at the door. "You taught us all to build, Elena." Alone again, Elena whispers to the quiet room, "Then I did enough." Elena returns to the Foundation's anniversary gala as guest, not host. The hall is filled with new faces, voices that carry hope instead of ambition. She sits beside the young director, barely 30, full of ideas. "You were the founder," the woman says shyly. "Your speech changed everything." Elena smiles, modest but proud. "Words are wind," she says gently. "What matters is who listens." As the lights dim for a tribute video, her name flashes on the screen. The maid turned mogul, the woman who rewrote the hierarchy. The audience applauds, but Elena's eyes are on the stage, on the next generation stepping forward. It feels right. It feels like release. In a quiet cafe, Elena meets Daniel for the first time in years. He's softer now, his edges worn by time. "You look happy," he says, sincere. "You too," she replies, though both know happiness looks different after 40. They talk about the past like historians. Careful, analytical, gentle. When he mentions Miriam, Elena's eyes soften. "I still think about her," she admits. "She was part of the climb." Daniel nods. She'd say the same. The moment stretches. Two lives once entangled, now parallel. When they part, it's with gratitude, not regret. Outside, autumn leaves scatter in wind, golden and weightless. Amira brings Elena to a classroom downtown, a new scholarship initiative named after her. "You should see what they've done," she says. The students, bright-eyed and unguarded, listen as Elena speaks about failure, resilience, and dignity. "Titles fade," she tells them, "but how you treat people, that lasts." Afterward, a boy shyly asks for her autograph. Elena laughs softly. "Make it out to your future self." The laughter that follows feels lighter than applause ever did. When she leaves the building, sunlight catches her silver hair. It doesn't dull her. It crowns her. Evening settles over Elena's home. Quiet, familiar, kind. She sits by the window where once she plotted survival, now simply watching the skyline pulse like memory. A stack of handwritten letters rests nearby. Thank yous from scholarship recipients, from women who saw her story and believed they could rise too. She doesn't open them all. She doesn't need to. The city lights blink like signals from a younger world she helped shape. She whispers to no one and everyone, "You build your own inheritance." Then she closes her eyes, the hum of the city sensing with her breath. Steady, fulfilled, enduring. Years have passed like quiet pages turning. Elena, now 65, lives by the sea, a modest villa with walls that breathe salt and memory. She wakes early, walks barefoot along the shoreline, her hair silvered but eyes unchanged. The world no longer demands her presence in boardrooms. It honors her absence. Letters still arrive, invitations and accolades, but she opens only those written by hand. "You built something that saved me," one reads. She folds it carefully, placing it in a cedar box marked Legacy. As the tide brushes her feet, she smiles faintly, not at victory, but at the calm that comes when there's nothing left to prove. Amira visits with her young daughter. Bright, curious, unafraid. The child runs along the sand, chasing gulls, while the two women sit with tea between them. "You've built something that won't disappear," Amira says. Elena shakes her head gently. "Everything disappears, Amira. The trick is to leave what can't be erased." They talk about the foundation's next decade, about how leadership is less about control and more about permission, letting others believe they can. When Amira and her daughter leave, the child hugs Elena's waist. "I want to be like you," she says. Elena smiles. "Then be kinder." "That's harder." One evening, Elena opens an old photo album. Images of her at 27 in that kitchen, at 32 in that boardroom, at 39 in her office overlooking the skyline. Each photo a life contained. She traces Miriam's face in a family picture, seeing now not an enemy, but a mirror of her own hunger. We were both just trying to matter, she murmurs. The house creaks softly, waves whispering outside. She closes the album and exhales. Forgiveness, long earned, arriving at last, not as gesture, but understanding. The world had once called her a maid, then a mogul. Now, she is simply a woman who built peace from noise. The foundation hosts a final tribute in her honor, Navarro Legacy Lecture Series. Elena speaks briefly, voice gentle, almost fragile. When you reach the summit, remember to look down with kindness. Someone else is still climbing. The applause is soft, reverent, more like a prayer than celebration. Afterward, she lingers backstage, watching the next speaker, Amira's daughter, now grown, confident. Elena smiles, recognizing her own cadence in the young woman's words. The circle is complete. The legacy, no longer hers alone, but shared, multiplied, alive. Dawn rises over the sea. Elena sits on the porch, wrapped in a shawl, the world painted in gold and mist. She closes her eyes and listens. Waves, gulls, the faint hum of a life fully lived. On the table beside her, a notebook lies open, a single line written, "To build is to love what comes after you." The breeze lifts the page, carrying the words briefly into the light before letting them fall again. Elena exhales slowly, smiling, her silhouette framed by sunlight. The camera pulls back. The sea endless, her story still unfolding somewhere beyond the horizon.